Florida governor and potential 2024 Republican presidential candidate Ron DeSantis denouncing Donald Trump's indictment on Thursday, calling the move un-American and a weaponization of the legal system, and vowing not to assist in the former president's extradition from Florida. Our panel is back with a look at what the indictment could mean for the 2024 presidential primary and Donald Trump's Republican rivals. Kyle, first of all, the extradition point really doesn't mean much because the president's now going to appear himself in New York. But what do you make of all of the Republican candidates lining up and saying, basically saying this is a political prosecution? Smart strategy?
Well, I think that's probably a smart strategy, saying it's a political prosecution. I think that is maybe the common denominator everybody can agree on, Republican voters can agree on. I'm doubtful of going further than that, though, like Ron DeSantis saying he wouldn't help with extradition. My understanding is the law is that the governor of a state does not have a choice about that. And so I think there's a significant risk here for Republican candidates going too far in their defenses of the president, because we don't know all the evidence, and they may go full hilt for President Trump, and then some damning piece of evidence comes out. I think DeSantis was savvier a little bit earlier when he said this was a political prosecution, but he personally doesn't know what goes into paying off an adult film star. I think that was a little craftier, reminding voters that this is some sordid business, even if it shouldn't be charged in his view. You
agree with that, Monet? Because the DeSantis needs Trump voters. He needs to pick up some of those. And if they sense that he isn't full-throated on the side of the president in this, he could suffer, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, as Kyle mentioned, he kind of tried to walk the line in the very beginning between criticizing Mr. Trump for his conduct, while also suggesting that he thought the charge was politicized. And I think that will resonate with voters, even certain Trump voters. Most Trump voters already do like DeSantis. They see them as allies in some of the same causes. I think that DeSantis needs to show he knows that this is a politically motivated process on the part of Bragg, and that he condemns it and doesn't believe that a former president should be charged for this kind of crime. But I don't think that he needs to be, out shouting Trump's praises and rallying to his defense. That's not going to help him with people who like him for other reasons, and I don't think that's necessarily what's expected of him by the Republican primary base.
Kim, the risk for the Republicans who are running against Trump is that the trials and the cases, they'll all suck all the oxygen out of the room. All the focus will be on Trump, and these candidates won't get any attention for what they're talking about and won't be able to focus on their campaigns. What advice would you give these candidates about how to go about their business? Ignore the trials and all this, say, I've already commented on that once, I'm not going to comment again, and focus on Biden?
Yeah, absolutely. That is the right advice, Paul. I mean, look, if they're asked to talk about this again, I think there actually is a way to thread the needle where you can you come across as genuine by noting that this is a really problematic prosecution. And then you also bring up the question of asking voters, saying, look, here's the problem. This is always going to be the case with Donald Trump. They're always going to be coming after them. We got to ask whether or not we want that continued kind of drama. But then, yes, turn the attention back to Biden and the economy and the failures that are going on at the moment, because I think there's a lot of Republican voters, base voters, who want to hear that. They want to hear the message. They want to know how they can compare and contrast these different candidates. They want to know what these people would do to fix it. And while the media might have endless appetite for Trump, I think voters are going to reward those candidates that instead are talking about issues that are front and center in voters' lives right now.
Especially as the trial goes on, that could happen. So, one of the things that I really worry about with this case, Kyle, is the long-term implications that the precedent sets of indicting a former president for the first time in 230 years. These things tend, when you break norms like this, what tends to happen is other prosecutors will say, aha, if he can do that, well, I can do that. And some Republican prosecutor in some local jurisdiction somewhere decides he wants to indict a Democratic president. I think this opens a door for that kind of thing, and it really worries me.
Yeah, I think that's something that voters ought to be concerned about, and not only, I mean, it's one thing if you have the first indictment against a former president in history, and it's an open and shut case on a serious charge, and in general you can get 70-30 agreement that this was a good idea. But I worry that we're not going down that road. We're going to be in a place where this is just another partisan football, and I think you're right. I think there are a lot of Republicans, local prosecutors, who will think what's good for the goose is good for the gander.